Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're going to dive into one of the more, let's say, interesting sources we've looked at, Peter Lawrence's For the Thinking Sapiens.
Yeah.
It's not exactly a standard book, is it? More like a blast of short takes, philosophy, life lessons, even stuff from movies.
Yeah, it's definitely a mental mosaic. The author really throws everything at the wall. You get Eastern philosophy, neuroscience, some pretty blunt social critique all mixed together. And the structure itself is kind of jarring, but fascinating. It kicks off with this questions section.
Right, those cryptic ones.
Exactly. Not simple questions, real brain teasers like that ethical dilemma about the mother and daughter in the crash, or, what single question you'd ask someone who kidnapped you for 15 years. Heavy stuff right out of the gate.
And look, before we get into the main philosophical ramblings, we need to be really clear about our mission for this deep dive. It's quite specific this time. We're analyzing this whole text through a particular theological lens. We're looking specifically for arguments, stories, whatever, that really line up with universal Catholic ethics. Virtue, fortitude, definitely the anti-materialism angle.
And crucially, we're also highlighting where Lawrence's ideas clash, where they stand in direct contrast, especially around human nature. Free will, that's a big one.
Yeah, it is. So the goal is finding that ethical consistency where it exists, but also pinpointing those friction points. And of course, we need to keep an ear out for the author's voice itself.
Right. Got to spot the cynicism, the dark humor. He even flags some of it in his cynic rants section, which helps. So yeah, it's going to be a proper deep dive into the soul of these sources. Let's unpack it.
Okay, so starting with alignment. The strongest connection seems to be right away, focusing on core virtues. Wisdom comes up first.
Yeah, he frames it with that quintessential question. If you could have anything, just one thing, what would it be? And he immediately brings up King Solomon.
Solomon asking God for wisdom, not riches or power.
Exactly. And the author argues this wasn't just, a noble choice. It was fundamentally rational. Wisdom is the bedrock. Everything else kind of rests on it. Without wisdom, other gifts, money, power, they can become liabilities, right?
Makes sense. He quotes that proverb, doesn't he? A fool and his money are soon parted.
Yeah. It suggests plain intelligence isn't enough. You need judgment, prudence. We see it all the time, like you mentioned earlier, maybe with lottery winners, huge windfall. But without the wisdom to handle it, it often ends badly. Abuse, loss.
Right, so wisdom's the compass.
Yeah.
But you still need the engine, something to actually make you act on that wisdom. And the source says that's fortitude.
Precisely. Wisdom tells you the right path. Fortitude gives you the courage to walk it, especially when it's tough or, frankly, dangerous.
And he uses some really stark examples to show how easily that fortitude can just evaporate.
Incredibly dark examples. He mentions Nazi Germany, the systemic failure of courage there, but also things like the Milgram experiment, which is maybe more relatable on a smaller scale, but just as unsettling.
Yeah, Milgram is key here. Maybe just quickly remind us what that showed, because it really speaks to this idea of fortitude eroding.
Sure. So back in the 60s, Stanley Milgram set up this experiment. Ordinary people were told by an authority figure, the experimenter, to give electric shocks to another person, a learner, whenever they answered wrong.
But the learner was an actor. The shocks weren't real.
Correct. But the participants thought they were real and increasingly painful, even dangerous. They got visibly distressed, uncomfortable. But the experimenter just kept saying things like, the experiment requires that you continue.
And most people,
about 2/3 went all the way. They administered what they believed could be lethal shocks, just because an authority figure told them to. It showed how that inner voice, that conscience saying, this is wrong, gets overridden by external pressure. They lack the fortitude, the moral guts to just say, no more.
Wow. And that fear, it isn't just about authority figures in lab coats, is it? It's peer pressure, societal expectations. It's a daily thing.
Absolutely. And that's where Lawrence connects it back to us, to the listener. He argues fortitude isn't this magical thing you just summon in a crisis. It's built, little by little.
Through practice. He asks that really challenging question, doesn't he? Something like, if we duck the small chances to do right, do we honestly think we'll have the guts when it really matters?
Exactly that. It's about building moral muscle memory. Consistent action defines who you are.
Okay, so that's wisdom and fortitude. Moving on, there's another huge area of alignment. The anti-materialist message. Fulfillment versus just consumption.
Yeah, and his analogy here is great. Seeking fulfillment in stuff, material wealth, is like eating empty calories.
Right. You can stuff yourself with fast food, fast fashion, the latest gadget.
But you're still spiritually starving because you're not getting essential nutrients. And he connects it straight to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Well, he argues that in developed societies, people are often trying to satisfy their highest needs, self-actualization, belonging, purpose, with things designed for the lowest needs, like physical stuff or basic security. You can't fix a lack of meaning by buying a bigger house or a faster car. It's trying to fill the wrong hole.
It provides maybe a temporary distraction, but not real substance.
Exactly. The real nutrients, the spiritual ones, remain untouched.
And he gives that great story about Joseph Heller, the author of Catch-22.
Oh, yeah, the party story. Heller's at this lavish party thrown by some super wealthy hedge fund guy, and someone points out that the host made more money in one day than Heller's famous book earned in its entire lifetime.
Ouch. But Heller's response is perfect.
It really is. He just says, yeah, but I've got something he can never have.
Which is?
The knowledge that I've got enough. Enoughness, that's the key. It frees you from that endless chase, that consumer treadmill, and the constant fear of losing what you have.
But the book doesn't just champion contentment. It also warns about the dangers of piling up wealth.
Right? It's not just neutral. It can actually attract danger. He points to history, the French Revolution, targeting the rich, things like that. But the image that really sticks is that Taoist parable.
The grave robbers.
Yeah, it's pretty chilling. These grave robbers are looking for treasure, and they find this corpse buried with a huge pearl in its mouth. So they smash the skull to get it. The point being, the wealth attracted violence and destruction even after death. Lawrence basically says, what's the point of accumulating riches you can't possibly enjoy when you're gone? It's pointless, and it makes you a target. That critique aligns perfectly with, theological calls for detachment. Focus on eternal things, not temporary stuff.
Okay, wisdom, fortitude, anti-materialism. That brings us to the highest virtue. Love. He asks that question in number 4, I think. What brings more joy, being loved or loving?
And his conclusion is pretty clear. The joy comes from the act of loving itself. Whether it's returned or not, that's almost secondary. The joy is internal.
Which sounds a lot like the concept of agape love, right? That selfless, unconditional kind.
Exactly. It's highly consistent. He uses a quote from the movie Adaptation, the character Donald.
Oh, yeah. What's the quote?
Donald says something like, you are what you love, not what loves you. That's what I decided a long time ago. If the joy is internal, generated just by the act of loving, then it's something you control completely. It's an inexhaustible resource inside you.
And that leads to the ultimate challenge he lays down.
Yeah, he wraps up this whole ethical blueprint by saying, I bet there is no greater challenge than trying to love your neighbor as yourself. That's pretty much the core message, isn't it? Active, selfless charity as the model for a meaningful life.
Okay, so this focus on virtue and charity, it seems to naturally lead into a kind of practical guide for daily living. A lot about being present, making conscious choices.
Definitely. And he uses Tolstoy's short story, The Three Questions, to frame it, the abbreviated version anyway.
Right, the king searching for the secret to success. He wants to know the most important time, the most important person, and the most important thing to do. He asks all the experts, gets nowhere.
And finally finds this wise hermit living alone. And the hermit's answers are just brilliantly simple, but really profound, a kind of spiritual blueprint.
So the most important time?
Is now. Because it's the only time we actually have any power. The past is gone, the future isn't here yet. Now is all we can act in.
Okay. And the most important person?
Is the one you're with right now, at this very moment. Because you never know if you'll get another chance to interact with anyone else. The person right in front of you, that's your immediate focus, your immediate destiny in a way.
And the most important thing to do?
Is to do that person good. Simple as that. Because, as the source puts it, that's the reason we're here. It's a model for mindfulness, for charity, for just being present. It grounds spirituality in the immediate. Not grand gestures, but focus attention right here, right now.
This idea of focusing on the now seems to connect to what he says about waiting, too, the power of waiting.
Yeah, in our instant gratification world, he really champions delayed gratification. He brings up the famous Stanford marshmallow experiment.
The kids who could wait for the second marshmallow ended up doing better later in life, right?
Much better, on average.
And he applies this directly to money, to financial discipline. He outlines 3 ways people finance things they want or need.
Which are?
Credit, savings, and passive income. Credit users are like the kids grabbing the first marshmallow, spending future money, going into debt. Savings is better, but you're still spending your principal eating the seed corn, basically.
So the ultimate goal, the second marshmallow, is passive income.
Exactly. Funding purchases from the income generated by your investments without touching the original capital. That takes the longest wait, the most discipline, but it's the path to real financial independence. You let compound interest do the work.
And he notes that waiting has another benefit, doesn't it? It prunes your desires.
Absolutely crucial point. If you force yourself to wait before buying something, especially something impulsive, often the desire just fades. You realize it was a fleeting want, maybe driven by hype.
He uses the example of a James Bond movie, Moonraker. Yeah, like the urge to rush out and see the latest big thing is intense now, but wait a few months, the desire's probably gone. Waiting helps you discern what you really need or want versus what's just temporary noise. It's financial and spiritual discipline.
And to really hammer home this theme of living in the present and letting go of burdens, he uses that classic Zen story.
The two monks and the beautiful lady at the river, it's a great one.
Remind us how it goes.
Okay, so two monks sworn to celibacy, sworn never to touch a woman, reach a flooded river. There's a beautiful woman stranded, needing help to cross. The older monk, without hesitation, picks her up, carries her across the raging water, sets her down safely on the other side, and they continue walking.
And the younger monk is silent, but fuming internally.
For hours, he's stewing, judging his senior for breaking the rules. Finally, he can't take it anymore and bursts out, "How could you do that? We're forbidden to touch women."
And the older monk's reply is the whole point.
Yeah, the older monk just looks at him calmly and says, "Brother, I set her down by the river hours ago. Why are you still carrying her?"
The burden wasn't the act itself, which was done out of charity.
The spirit of the law, right. The burden was the judgment, the resentment, the mental baggage the younger monk chose to carry long after the event was over. That's letting go. Do what's needed in the moment, then move on. Don't carry the past.
And that ties right back into mindfulness, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Doing one thing fully, eating when you eat, walking when you walk, giving your full attention, maybe putting that phone away when you're talking to someone.
Precisely. Full presence.
Yeah. Okay, shifting gears a bit, we have to talk about the author's voice. It's not all profound wisdom and parables. There's a definite streak of cynicism, even dark humor.
Oh, yeah, especially in the cynic rant section. It's almost like he's giving himself permission there. This helps us fulfill that part of our mission spotting when he's deliberately being provocative or, just joking, albeit darkly.
Some of those definitions are designed to grab you, right? Like defining life as what was it?
A sexually transmitted terminal disease.
Right. It's bleak, but memorable.
Yeah.
Witty in a stark way.
And his social critiques can be razor sharp, defining cocktail parties as basically dog sniff tests.
Meaning people are just quickly sizing each other up based on superficial stuff. Job, clothes, status.
Yeah, figuring out worth without real conversation. It's maybe a bit lazy as cynicism goes, but it stings because, well, there's often a grain of truth there, isn't there?
Sadly, yeah. And even in the more serious bits, he slips in jokes. Like at the end of the good luck, bad luck story.
Stroking of beard is optional, little things like that.
But some of the cynicism is more analytical, less jokey. Like his critique of the action bias.
Yes, the action bias. That compulsion to always do something when faced with a problem, even if doing nothing might be better, he sees it as really dangerous.
And he builds that whole chain reaction example.
It's quite a sequence. Saddam invades Kuwait. Gotta do something. leads to bin Laden leads to the U.S. attacking Iraq, leads to the Fed chairman feeling he has to do something, so he lowers interest rates, which contributes to John Doe getting a subprime loan he can't afford.
And the conclusion is basically, look at the mess. Wouldn't we have been better off if everyone just didn't do something at critical points?
It's a provocative thought. And he uses Chernobyl as another example. The disaster wasn't just random failure. It was triggered by engineers deciding to do something, run a risky safety test they didn't need to run. Action bias leading to catastrophe.
This critique seems to extend into his views on work and labor culture, too.
Definitely. He uses these powerful animal analogies, the greyhound chasing the fake rabbit it can never catch.
Or the donkey chasing the carrot on a stick, always just out of reach.
Right. And the question he throws at the reader, the Thinking Sapiens, is what you're chasing real? Is it worth it? Or is it just an illusion keeping you running on someone else's track?
And that constant running can have grim consequences. He mentions Katrushi, death from overwork in Japan, and draws that really dark comparison
between historical master-slave dynamics and modern employer-employee relationships, citing Joseph Campbell.
They're pretty controversial.
Highly provocative. The argument is, in both systems, one party provides sustenance, food, and shelter, or a salary in exchange for the other's labor and essentially their time. The relationship is defined by that control.
And he equates escaping that system, achieving financial independence with.
with the cry of an escaped slave, that final ecstatic shout, "Free at last! Free at last! Free at last!" It frames modern work, for many, as a form of bondage.
And if you're always chasing, always busy.
You can't be wise. He uses that lumberjack story, the guy too busy sawing to stop and sharpen his saw.
Because he claims he doesn't have time.
Right. And the punchline is brutal. Those who are wise won't be busy, and those who are too busy can't be wise. Constant busyness crowds out reflection, discernment, wisdom itself.
Okay, this feels like the major pivot point now. We've seen alignment on virtue, critiques of society. But now we hit the biggest area of conflict, theologically speaking.
Absolutely. This is where the source material directly challenges a core tenet. Catholic teaching fundamentally affirms human free will. Choice is essential for morality, for salvation. But Lawrence, well, he marshals a lot of arguments suggesting free will is perhaps largely an illusion. He leans heavily towards determinism.
And he pulls evidence from all over the place, doesn't he? Neuroscience, physics, social science.
It's a multi-pronged attack on the idea of free agency. Let's start with neuroscience. The Benjamin Libet experiment comes up.
Right. This is often cited as a major blow against free will. Explain what Libet found.
Okay, so Libet hooked people up to an EEG to monitor brain activity. He asked them to just spontaneously flick their wrist whenever they felt the urge and to note the exact moment they decided to do it.
And the results?
The results were stunning, really. The brain activity signaling the start of the action, called the readiness potential, began significantly before the person reported consciously deciding to act, like hundreds of milliseconds before.
So the brain was already gearing up to move before the conscious mind felt it made the choice.
That's the implication. It suggests the subconscious brain initiates the action and the conscious mind becomes aware of it later, maybe having a chance to veto it, but not truly initiating it. It gives us the feeling of free will, while the underlying machinery is already in motion.
Like consciousness is just playing catch-up.
Kind of. Then Lawrence broadens the net. He brings in genetics. We don't choose our genes, right?
Yeah.
And studies like the Minnesota twins study twins separated at birth, raised apart, showed just how powerful genes are.
They found identical twins raised in totally different environments often ended up remarkably similar.
Eerily similar sometimes. In personality, interests, life choices, it suggests a huge chunk of who we are is genetically predetermined. And then there are social forces.
Governments, peers, media influence.
Right. How much are our choices really ours versus shaped by the environment, by manipulation, by the limited options presented to us? He quotes a Harvard law professor saying something like, "Relatively few people make the important decisions," implying most of us just react within structures set by others.
And then he brings in the big guns. Physics.
Yeah, the ultimate deterministic framework, potentially. He quotes Einstein.
That famous quote.
"Everything is determined, the beginning as well as the end, by forces over which we have no control. We all dance to a mysterious tune, intoned in the distance by an invisible piper."
That paints a picture of a clockwork universe, doesn't it? If you knew the initial conditions, you could predict everything. No room for free choice.
It's the classical physics view, yeah.
That's right.
A universe governed by cause and effect, leaving little space for an immaterial will to intervene. And he sums it up most bluntly with a quote from RoboCop.
Seriously, RoboCop.
Yep. A character explaining how RoboCop is controlled. They feed signals into his brain, making him think he's doing what our computers are actually doing. It's the illusion of free will. That phrase, the illusion of free will, that's the core challenge here.
Okay, so he builds this massive case for determinism, pulling from science, physics, even pop culture. But then he seems to pull back. He offers a counterpoint. Why?
Because he's writing for the Thinking Sapiens, right? He presents the deterministic evidence, but he refuses to let it completely negate moral responsibility. It's the central tension. The counter-argument pivots on conscience and choice.
And he uses the movie Noah to illustrate this.
Yeah, the commentary on it. In the movie, Noah believes God's will requires him to kill his own granddaughters to complete the cleansing of the world, but his wife challenges him.
She argues the choice is his.
Exactly. She says God put the choice in his hands. And when Noah ultimately chooses mercy, chooses love, over what he thought was divine command, the film suggests he made the right choice. The message is, follow your conscience, don't hide behind excuses like it was God's will or I was determined to do it.
So conscience trumps determinism.
That seems to be the counter-argument, and he backs it up explicitly with a quote from the Bible, from Romans. They show that the requirements of the law are written on their hearts, their consciences also bearing witness. That internal compass, that moral law written on the heart, is presented as something real, something that defies a purely mechanistic view.
And there's one more quote reinforcing choice from Hellboy.
Right. Another movie quote, where a character says about Hellboy, it's not about his origins, his demonic nature, his programming. What defines him is the choices he makes. Not how he starts things, but how he decides to end things.
So the sources present this deep conflict. Are we puppets of physics and genes, dancing to that invisible piper? Or are we defined by our moral choices, by how we choose to act, despite all those influences?
It's left unresolved. That's the challenge for the reader, to wrestle with both sides.
Okay, moving from the nature of choice itself to how we find truth, Lawrence seems pretty skeptical about our ability to grasp objective truth easily.
Very skeptical. He looks at how resistant we are to facts that challenge our existing beliefs. It makes the whole pursuit of truth seem incredibly fragile.
He mentions that University of Michigan study, right? The backfire effect.
Yeah, that's a fascinating and depressing finding. They took people with strong political beliefs, showed them factual corrections that disproved something they believed.
And instead of changing their minds.
They often dug in deeper. They became more confident in their original wrong belief after seeing the correction. It's like our psychological defenses kick in to protect our worldview, even from facts.
We prefer comfort over truth sometimes.
Seems like it. He uses the story of Gayla Benefield, too. She discovered her town's mine was poisoning everyone with asbestos.
And when she tried to warn people,
They didn't want to know. Acknowledging the truth would mean facing terrifying changes, illness, maybe having to leave their homes, their jobs. They actively preferred ignorance over the devastating truth.
this difficulty in seeing the whole picture, he connects that to the blind men and the elephant allegory.
It's a perfect metaphor for human limitation. Each blind man touches just one part of the elephant, the leg, the trunk, the tail, and confidently declares that part is the whole truth. An elephant is like a rope. No, it's like a tree trunk.
They mistake their partial experience for the total reality.
And they argue fiercely, convinced they're right and the others are wrong. It highlights our inability to grasp absolute whole truth and the arrogance that comes from clinging to our limited perspective.
It also suggests that seemingly contradictory truths can coexist, right? Like light being both a wave and a particle.
Exactly. Reality might be more complex than our neat categories allow. The real error is insisting your piece is the whole puzzle.
And this isn't just a problem for ordinary folks. He goes after the experts, too.
Oh, yeah. The failure of experts section is a sharp critique. He brings up Thomas Kuhn's idea about paradigm shifts, how established experts often resist revolutionary new ideas for decades. Literally, a generation has to die off before the new truth gets fully accepted.
He gives examples of experts getting it spectacularly wrong.
He does. The Nobel Prize-winning economist who ran the long-term capital management, LTCM hedge fund, brilliant minds, complex mathematical models.
And it blew up completely.
Because their models didn't account for extreme real-world chaos. They assumed rationality where there wasn't any. And then there's Theranos.
That's more recent, the blood testing company.
Right. Look at their board. Huge names, Kissinger, Mattis, Schultz. Distinguished, experienced leaders, yet they were completely taken in by fraudulent technology.
Why? What was the failure there?
Relying on reputation, on charisma, on what others on the board thought instead of demanding hard empirical proof. Trusting the pedigree over the data.
So what's the antidote to this expert failure, this groupthink?
Independent thinking, doing the work yourself. He uses the physicist Richard Feynman as the model.
How so?
Feynman was working on beta decay theory. Everyone was quoting results based on one original flawed study. Feynman's own experiments kept giving different answers, instead of just accepting the consensus or quoting others.
He went back to the source.
Exactly. He reran the original experiment himself, did his own calculations, and found the initial data was flawed. He trusted his own work over decades of accepted wisdom. The lesson is clear. Do your own thinking, check the data, don't just follow the herd, even if the herd is full of experts.
Okay, so despite all this, the difficulty of truth, the fallibility of experts, the determinism debate, the material doesn't end in complete cynicism. There's a final note of hope.
Resilience, definitely. Hope. Lawrence argues that long-term thinking, the kind needed for truly great projects like building a cathedral over centuries or planting a tree whose shade you'll never sit in, that kind of thinking requires hope. Esperanza, he calls it.
Hope allows us to act even without immediate reward.
It fuels persistence. He tells that striking story about Kurt Richter's rat experiment.
The swimming rats.
Yeah. Richter put rats in water to see how long they'd swim before giving up. The first group lasted about 15 minutes, then drowned.
Grim. But the second group.
With the second group, after about 15 minutes, Richter briefly pulled them out, gave them a short rest, a moment of rescue, and then put them back in.
Mm.
Those rats, having experienced hope, the possibility of rescue, swam for an average of 60 hours.
Whoa. So the 15-minute limit wasn't physical.
It was psychological despair. Hope fundamentally changed their perceived limits, their endurance. It wasn't about muscle fatigue, it was about belief.
And he scales this up to humanity.
Using the stock market as an analogy, if you zoom way out, look at market history over a century, the big crashes 1929, 2008, they look like tiny dips on a line that's generally trending upwards.
So despite setbacks, the overall direction is towards improvement.
That's the argument. Mankind stumbles, takes steps back, but the long-term trajectory is gradual betterment. That long view, that hopeful perspective is what the Thinking Sapiens needs to cultivate.
Okay, so wrapping this up, this deep dive into For the Thinking Sapiens has been, well, a workout. We've seen that strong alignment with core virtues, wisdom, fortitude, saying no to materialism that resonates with traditional teachings.
Yeah, a surprising amount of overlap there. But then we hit that major tension, that huge question mark around free will versus determinism, which directly challenges some theological foundations.
And throughout, the author pushes us, right? Check your biases, question authority, be present, sharpen the saw.
Constantly challenging, but the very last thought he leaves us with, it takes things to another level. It questions our fundamental perception of reality itself.
He uses that analogy from the movie Origins.
Yeah.
About the worm.
It's a powerful image. A worm, he says, experiences the world mainly through smell and touch. It has no concept of light. Light exists all around it, bathing it constantly, but the worm can't perceive it. It's in a dimension beyond its senses.
Okay, so what's the leap he makes?
The leap is this. If a small genetic mutation could suddenly give some worms the ability to perceive light, this whole new dimension, what if a similar thing has happened, or could happen, with humans?
Meaning?
What if some humans have, through some mutation or evolution, developed a kind of spirit sense, an ability to perceive a reality, a dimension that's right here, all around us, just like the light was for the worm, but that most of us can't sense?
The unseen unknown, as he calls it.
Exactly. We can't see it, we can't measure it with our current tools or senses, but, Lawrence asks, does our inability to perceive it mean it doesn't exist?
Wow, that's quite a closing thought. Questioning the very limits of our reality based on limits of our perception.
It's the ultimate challenge for the Thinking Sapiens, isn't it? What might be right here that we simply lack the senses to detect?
A lot to chew on there. Until the next deep dive, keep questioning.
And keep thinking.